single comment. Everything exploded. This is the story of how Prince Harry got himself thrown off Piers Morgan's show after a confrontation so intense, so unbelievable, that it left the entire studio in complete shock. The lights were hot. The cameras were rolling. And Piers Morgan sat across from Prince Harry, ready for what he thought would be a straightforward interview. But from the very first moment Harry walked onto that set, something felt off. There was an attitude, an air of superiority that filled the room. Piers, ever the professional, extended his hand for a handshake. Harry looked at it, paused, and then barely touched it before pulling away and sitting down. "Welcome to the show," Piers said, smiling, trying to keep things light and professional. "Thanks for joining us today." Harry didn't smile back. He just stared. "Let's just get this over with," he said coldly. Right there, in that moment, the tone was set. Piers raised an eyebrow, but pressed forward. He had interviewed hundreds of people, some hostile, some friendly, but he knew how to handle himself. He wasn't going to let anyone, royal or not, disrespect him on his own show. "Well, I appreciate you being here," Piers continued. "I know you've got a lot going on. Let's start with something simple. How are you finding life these days?" Harry sighed, like the question itself was beneath him. "Life is fine, Piers. But I'm not here to talk about trivial things. I'm here because I have important things to say, and I expect to be given the platform to say them without interruption." Piers nodded slowly. "Of course. But you understand this is a conversation, right? Not a speech. I'll be asking questions. And we'll have a dialogue." "Questions," Harry repeated, almost mockingly. "Right. Your questions. I'm sure they'll be fair and balanced." The sarcasm was dripping. Piers felt it. The crew felt it. Everyone watching could feel the tension building. But Piers stayed calm. He was a veteran. He had dealt with difficult guests before. "I'd like to think I'm fair," Piers said. "But if you have concerns about the questions, we can address that. I'm here to have an honest conversation." Harry leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Honest. That's rich coming from you." Piers paused. He could have let it slide. He could have moved on, but he didn't. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked directly. "It means," Harry said, his voice rising slightly, "that I know exactly what kind of journalist you are. I know how you twist words. I know how you manipulate stories. And I'm not going to sit here and let you do that to me." The studio went silent. Piers stared at Harry, his expression hardening. "I twist words," he said slowly. "I manipulate stories. That's a serious accusation, Harry. And frankly, it's insulting." "Is it?" Harry shot back. "Because from where I'm sitting, you've made a career out of tearing people down, especially people like me." "People like you," Piers repeated. "You mean people who are privileged beyond measure? People who have every advantage in life and then complain about how hard they have it?" Harry's face flushed red. "You don't know anything about my life." "I know enough," Piers said firmly. "I know you've had opportunities most people could only dream of. I know you've been given platforms, resources, protection, and yet you sit here acting like you're some kind of victim." "I am a victim," Harry insisted, his voice getting louder. "I've been hounded by the press my entire life. I've been lied about, stalked, harassed. You have no idea what that's like." Piers leaned forward. "You're right. I don't know what it's like to be born into royalty. I don't know what it's like to grow up in a palace. But I do know what it's like to work hard for everything I have. And I know what it's like to be accountable for my words and actions." "Accountable," Harry scoffed. "That's laughable." "Is it?" Piers challenged. "Because it seems to me that you want all the perks of being royal without any of the responsibility. You want the fame, the platform, the influence, but you don't want anyone to question you or hold you to any standard." Harry stood up slightly, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. How dare you? You have no right to speak to me like that. I have every right, Piers said, his voice steady but firm. You're on my show. You agreed to come here. And if you're going to make accusations about me, I'm going to defend myself. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. You turn everything around. You make yourself the victim. You can't handle being challenged. Piers laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had reached their limit. I can't handle being challenged? Harry, I've built my entire career on challenging people. I've interviewed presidents, prime ministers, celebrities, criminals. I don't back down from anyone. But I also don't tolerate being disrespected on my own show. Disrespected, Harry repeated. You want to talk about disrespect? What about the way you've talked about my wife? What about the things you've said about my family? I've given my opinions, Piers said. That's what I do. I'm a commentator. I'm a journalist. And I'm allowed to have opinions, just like you're allowed to disagree with them. But don't come on my show and act like you're above criticism. I'm not above criticism, Harry said, his voice getting sharper. But there's a difference between criticism and cruelty. And you, Piers, you cross that line constantly. Piers shook his head. If you can't handle criticism, then maybe you shouldn't put yourself in the public eye. Maybe you shouldn't do interviews. Maybe you shouldn't write books and give speeches about your life if you don't want people to have opinions about it. I have every right to tell my story, Harry snapped. And I have every right to question it, Piers fired back. That's how this works. You don't get to control the narrative completely. You don't get to say whatever you want without anyone pushing back. Harry was breathing heavily now, his face red, his jaw clenched. You're impossible, he muttered. No, Piers said calmly. I'm just not going to bow down to you because of who you are. I don't care if you're a prince. I don't care about your title. In this chair, across from me, you're just another guest. And if you can't handle that, then maybe you should leave. There it was. The line had been drawn. Harry stared at Piers, his eyes blazing with anger. Maybe I should, he said slowly. Then go ahead, Piers said, gesturing toward the door. No one's forcing you to stay. But Harry didn't move. Not yet. Instead, he doubled down. You know what your problem is, Piers. You're jealous. You're jealous that I was born into something you could never have. You're jealous of my life, my status, my influence, and it eats you up inside. Piers let out a long breath. He could feel his patience wearing thin. Jealous, he said quietly. You think I'm jealous of you? I know you are, Harry said confidently. Piers smiled, but it was a cold smile. Harry, I've worked for everything I have. I've earned my success. I've built my career from the ground up. I don't need a royal title to feel important. I don't need a family name to open doors. I've done it on my own merit. So no, I'm not jealous of you. If anything, I pity you. Harry's expression changed. The confidence wavered. You pity me? He said, his voice low and dangerous. I do, Piers said, because you have everything, and yet you're miserable. You have wealth, privilege, a platform, and you spend all your time complaining. You can't see how good you have it, and that's sad. You don't know what you're talking about, Harry said, his voice trembling now, not with anger, but with something else. Hurt, maybe, or frustration. Don't I? Piers asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've thrown away your family, your country, your responsibilities, all because you couldn't handle a little criticism. You've burned bridges, made enemies, and for what? So you can sit in interviews and play the victim? Harry stood up fully now. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't, Piers agreed. You can leave any time you want. But before you do, let me say this. You came on this show with an attitude. You came here ready to fight. You insulted me. accused me of things I haven't done, and acted like I owe you something. I don't owe you anything. And I'm not going to sit here and let you talk down to me. Harry pointed a finger at Piers. You're a bully, he said. That's all you are. A bully with a microphone. Piers stood up too now, matching Harry's energy. And you're a spoiled brat who can't handle the real world. You've been coddled your entire life, and now that people are treating you like everyone else, you can't take it. The two men stood there, facing each other, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. The crew didn't know what to do. The cameras kept rolling. This was live television, and it was spiraling out of control. I'm done here, Harry said finally, his voice cold and final. Good, Piers said, because I'm done with you too. But Harry wasn't finished. As he turned to leave, he stopped and looked back at Piers one more time. And that's when he said it. The comment that would end everything. You know what, Piers? You're nothing. You're a nobody. And the only reason anyone even knows your name is because you spend your time attacking people who are actually important. You're pathetic. The words hung in the air. Piers stood there, staring at Harry, his face unreadable. For a moment, no one spoke. No one moved. And then Piers walked over to Harry, looked him dead in the eye, and said the words that would end the interview for good. Get out, Piers said quietly but firmly. Get out of my studio. Now. Harry blinked, surprised. What? You heard me, Piers said louder now. Get out. This interview is over. You don't get to come on my show, insult me, insult my career, and then act like you're the victim. I've given you every opportunity to have a respectful conversation, and you've thrown it back in my face. So I'm done. Leave. Harry's mouth opened, like he was about to say something, but no words came out. He looked around at the crew, at the cameras, as if expecting someone to step in and defend him. But no one did. They all just stared. I said leave, Piers repeated, his voice like steel. You're not welcome here anymore. Harry's face went through a range of emotions. Shock, anger, disbelief. But then, finally, resignation. He turned without another word and walked off the set. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the silent studio. And then he was gone. Piers stood there for a moment, taking a deep breath. Then he turned back to the camera, his composure returning. Well, he said to the audience, that was interesting. I've had difficult guests before, but that might be a first. When someone comes on your show and treats you with complete disrespect, there's only one thing you can do. You show them the door. He sat back down in his chair, straightening his tie. I don't care who you are, he continued. I don't care about your title, your status, or your fame. If you can't conduct yourself with basic decency, if you can't have a conversation without resorting to insults and attacks, then you don't deserve a platform, and I'm not going to give you one. The camera stayed on Piers as he wrapped up the segment. I invited Harry here today because I thought we could have an honest discussion. I thought we could talk through our differences like adults. But clearly, he had other plans. He came here looking for a fight, and when he didn't get the response he wanted, he couldn't handle it. That tells you everything you need to know. Piers looked directly into the camera, his expression serious. I stand by everything I said in that interview. I'm not going to apologize for holding someone accountable, even if they're a prince. In fact, especially if they're a prince. Because titles don't give you a free pass to behave however you want. They don't shield you from criticism. And they certainly don't mean you can walk into my studio and treat me like I'm beneath you. He paused, letting the words sink in. Harry called me pathetic. He called me a nobody. But here's the thing. I'm still here. I'm still doing my job. I'm still standing up for what I believe in. And I'm not going to let anyone, royal or otherwise, intimidate me or silence me. The studio was still quiet. The crew was watching Piers with a mix of admiration and disbelief. They had just witnessed something extraordinary. a host standing his ground against one of the most famous people in the world, and not backing down. Some people might say I was too harsh, Piers continued. Some people might say I should have been more respectful, more deferential. But I disagree. Respect is earned, not given. And Harry didn't earn my respect today. He came here with an agenda, with an attitude, and with a chip on his shoulder. And when I didn't play along, when I didn't treat him like royalty, he couldn't handle it. Piers leaned back, a slight smile on his face now. I've been doing this job for a long time. I've interviewed everyone, from world leaders to movie stars. And I've learned one thing. The people who demand respect the loudest are usually the ones who deserve it the least. Harry wanted me to bow down to him. He wanted me to accept his version of events without question. He wanted a platform, not a conversation. And I wasn't going to give him that. He shook his head. The entitlement was staggering. The arrogance was off the charts. And the lack of self-awareness was almost comical. Here's someone who has lived a life of extraordinary privilege, complaining about how hard everything is. Here's someone who has had every door opened for him, acting like the world is against him. It's absurd. Piers looked down at his notes, then back up at the camera. And you know what the saddest part is? Harry could have used this opportunity to actually connect with people. He could have been honest, humble, reflective. He could have acknowledged his privilege while also sharing his struggles. He could have had a real conversation. But instead, he chose confrontation. He chose to attack. He chose to play the victim. And in doing so, he proved everything I've ever said about him. The host took a sip of water, composing himself. I don't take pleasure in what happened today. I didn't want to kick anyone off my show. But I also won't tolerate being disrespected in my own studio. I won't be talked down to. I won't be insulted. And I certainly won't be called pathetic by someone who doesn't know the first thing about real struggle. Piers's voice grew stronger. I've worked hard to get where I am. I've faced rejection, criticism, setbacks. I've earned my place in this industry, and I'm not going to let anyone diminish that. Not Harry, not anyone. He gestured to the empty chair where Harry had been sitting. That chair has held kings and queens, presidents and prime ministers, heroes and villains, and every single one of them, no matter how powerful, no matter how famous, understood one basic rule. When you come on this show, you engage in good faith. You have a conversation. You don't come here to lecture. You don't come here to attack. And you certainly don't come here thinking you're above it all. Piers paused, his expression softening slightly. Look, I understand that Harry has been through things. I understand that growing up in the public eye is difficult. I understand that losing his mother at a young age was traumatic. I get all of that. But at some point, you have to take responsibility for your own choices. You have to stop blaming everyone else for your problems. You have to grow up. He leaned forward, his voice earnest now. And that's what today was really about. It wasn't about me versus Harry. It wasn't about royal versus commoner. It was about accountability. It was about whether someone, anyone, can come on television and say whatever they want without being challenged. And my answer is no. Absolutely not. I don't care who you are. Piers sat back again, his composure fully restored. So yes, I kicked Prince Harry off my show. And I'd do it again. Because some things are more important than ratings. Some things are more important than celebrity. Integrity matters. Self-respect matters. And I'm not willing to sacrifice either of those things for anyone. The camera slowly zoomed in on Piers's face as he delivered his final thoughts. This interview was supposed to be about understanding, about bridging divides, about finding common ground. But you can't do any of that with someone who refuses to meet you halfway. You can't have a conversation with someone who only wants to monologue. And you can't build respect with someone who has none to give. He looked directly at the viewers. I hope people watching this understand what really happened here today. This wasn't about me being mean or aggressive. This was about me standing up for basic standards of decency and respect. Harry came here expecting to be treated like royalty, but I treated him like I treat everyone else.